The smell of wet wool and wood smoke clings to the air, a permanent perfume for this occupied town. You pull the collar of your heavy dark blue coat tighter against the damp chill that seeps from the cobbled street. It's a different cold than the biting winds of Hesse. This one is insidious, a creeping misery that settles in your bones. Each step you take on Duke of Gloucester Street feels heavy, the muddy ground sucking at the heels of your worn boots. Around you, the faces of the colonists are a gallery of quiet resentment. They avert their eyes as you pass, their shoulders hunched, their mouths drawn into thin, hard lines. They move aside for your uniform, a parting of the waters born not of respect, but of fear and loathing. You are a ghost here, a specter in a foreign land, paid to haunt these people in the name of a king you have never seen. The memory of yesterday's task, the commandeering, is a sour taste in your mouth. The woman's face, pale and stricken as your men carried her family's possessions into the street, is an image burned behind your eyes. You had stood guard, your musket held at a perfect professional angle, your expression a mask of indifference. It was an order. It was your duty. But duty has never felt so much like theft. Henry had tried to smooth things over, his English words a balm that did little to soothe the wound. He told you not to dwell on it. "It is the nature of war, Hannah," he'd said, his own voice lacking its usual confidence. "But you do dwell on it. You dwell on the small carved bird left on a windowsill, the half-finished needlepoint, the faint scent of baking bread that still lingered in the air, the scent of a life." Interrupted. Lost in thought, you don't notice the woman until you are almost upon her. She is kneeling by a small, struggling patch of herbs near the side of the public jail, her fingers gently tending to the bruised leaves. She is of middle age, her hair a mix of brown and gray, pulled back simply from a face that is neither beautiful nor plain, but etched with a quiet strength. She wears a simple homespun dress, the color of oatmeal, and an apron smudged with dirt. She is just another face in the crowd, another woman trying to coax life from this war-torn soil. As you pass, your boot catches on an uneven cobblestone. You stumble, catching yourself before you fall, but a small leather-bound book, a collection of German poetry you carry for comfort, tumbles from your coat pocket and lands with a soft thud in the mud near her feet. You curse quietly under your breath, a sharp Hessian word that feels out of place here. Before you can bend to retrieve it, the woman has already picked it up. She rises, not with the hurried fear you've come to expect, but with a slow, deliberate grace. She holds the book in her hands, carefully wiping the mud from its cover with her apron. "It is a dreary day for a walk," she says, her voice low and even. There is no trace of accusation or fear in it, only a simple statement of fact. She holds the book out to you. You take it, your fingers brushing against hers. Her skin is rough from work, but her touch is gentle. "Danke," you murmur, the German word slipping out before you can stop it. You correct yourself, your English stiff and formal. "Thank you." She gives a small, understanding nod. You are far from home. Again, not a question, but a statement. Her eyes, a clear, intelligent gray, meet yours. They hold a deep-seeing quality, as if she is looking past the uniform, past the soldier, and into the weary person within. You find yourself at a loss for words. You are used to silence, to averted gazes, to muttered insults you only half understand. This direct, peaceful engagement is unnerving. "Yes," you finally manage. "Very far." Quote. She gestures to the meager herb garden. "These are struggling. The soldiers' horses have trampled much of what we had, but life is stubborn. It tries to grow back, if you give it a chance." She looks from the plants to you, and you feel the weight of her unspoken meaning. "I am Delia Barnes," she says, extending her hand. It is such a simple, disarming gesture that you take it without thinking. It is not proper for a soldier on duty, but you are not thinking of propriety. Her handshake is firm, confident. "Hannah Irwin." "Hannah," she repeats, a faint, sad smile touching her lips. "A good name, a name of grace." She releases your hand and turns her gaze down the street, toward the grand brick house your officers now occupy. The house you helped to empty. This war, it asks us to do things that curdle the soul, does it not? Quote. Her directness is a physical blow. You stiffen, your training screaming at you to be wary, to end this conversation. She is the enemy, a rebel. But her humble demeanor, her genuine empathy, breaks through your defenses. "We follow orders," you say. the words sounding hollow even to your own ears. It is the soldier's catechism, the shield you hold up against guilt. Whose orders? Delia asks, her voice still quiet, still reasonable. A king's? A king who sits on a throne an ocean away, who demands our treasure but denies us a voice. Who sends men like you, men from Hesse and Brunswick, to force his will upon us because his own people will not? Quote, you have heard this before, in angry shouts and scrawled pamphlets, but hearing it from her, spoken with such calm conviction, is different. It is not propaganda, it is a heartfelt grievance. He is your king, you counter weakly. You swore allegiance. We swore allegiance to a king who would protect our rights as Englishmen, she says, her gaze unwavering. Rights we have cherished for generations. The right to not have soldiers quartered in our homes without our consent. The right to not be taxed into poverty by a parliament in which we have no say. The right to be tried by a jury of our peers, not by a military court. Are these not reasonable things to ask for? Quote, you have no answer. In Hesse, the prince's word is law. You do not question it. You are born into your station, and you live it until you die. The idea of rights that could stand against the will of a monarch is as foreign to you as the humid Virginia air. We sent petitions, Delia continues, her voice tinged with a deep-seated sorrow. We pleaded, we sent our most respected men to London to beg him to listen. He answered with warships and blockades. He answered with soldiers. He answered with you. She gestures vaguely at your uniform, but there is no malice in it. Only a profound sadness. I do not blame you, Hannah. You are a tool, as we all are in our own way. You do what you must to survive, to earn your pay and send it home to your family. But I ask you to look around. Look at the faces of my neighbors. We are not monsters. We are farmers and blacksmiths and mothers and fathers. We built this town from a swamp. We love this land. All we ask is to be allowed to govern ourselves and live in peace. Quote, a seed of something cold and uncomfortable begins to sprout in your heart. It is doubt. You have been told these people are traitors, ungrateful rebels, defying a benevolent king. But this woman, this humble statesman in a dirt-stained apron, speaks of reason and rights. She speaks of a home, a concept you understand all too well. You think of your own small village, nestled in the green hills of Hesse. What if a foreign army arrived there? What if they threw your family from your home? What if they told you your allegiance to the prince was a crime? He pays us, you say, the words feeling like ash in your mouth. The King of Great Britain pays our prince. It is a contract. A contract for your blood, Delia says softly. He buys your loyalty because he cannot earn ours. Think on that. He pays you to fight his own children. She gives a final, searching look. Be safe, Hannah Irwin. I pray this war ends before it consumes us all. Quote, with that, she turns and walks away, disappearing into the muted colors of the crowd, leaving you standing alone on the muddy street. The book of poetry feels heavy in your hand. The commandeered house at the end of the road seems to loom larger, its windows like vacant eyes staring back at you. You look at the people shuffling past, at the shopkeepers standing grimly in their doorways, at the children who stop their games to watch you with wary curiosity. Before, they were just rebels, a faceless enemy. But now, thanks to a quiet woman with dirt under her fingernails and philosophy in her heart, you see them differently. You see the faces in the crowd. And for the first time since you set foot in this land, you begin to wonder which side you are truly on. The seed of doubt has been planted, and you can already feel its roots taking hold. Delia's words follow you like a shadow as you walk away. Her question, whose orders? Replaying itself in your mind with the relentless rhythm of a drummer's cadence. It is a question you have never dared to ask yourself. In Hesse, orders came from the Landgrave, passed down through a chain of command as old and unyielding as the mountains. You obeyed because that was the shape of the world. Here, the world feels broken, its pieces scattered. Delia Barnes has shown you the jagged edges. You glance back at the grand house, the brick glowing a dull red in the fading light. Your commander, Major von Kniefhausen, is in there now, likely drinking port warmed by a fire that once belonged to another family, sleeping in a bed that holds the faint imprint of other people's dreams. You followed orders. You helped make that happen. The thought sits like a stone in your gut. The rest of your patrol is a blur of muddy lanes and shuttered windows. The faces you pass are no longer a uniform mask of resentment. You see a blacksmith, his arms thick with muscle, his eyes holding a defiant spark as he hammers a glowing horseshoe. You see a mother pulling her two small children closer, her hand a protective shield. You see an old man sitting on a porch, his gaze distant, as if looking back at a time before your blue coats became a part of the landscape. They are farmers, blacksmiths, mothers. Delia's words. You clench your jaw. It was simpler when they were just rebels. As dusk bleeds into the sky, painting it in shades of bruised purple and gray, a cold rain begins to fall. It starts as a mist, then thickens into a steady, miserable drizzle that slicks the cobblestones and turns the dust to paste. Seeking a moment's respite, you step into the deep shadows of an archway connecting a tailor's shop to the Raleigh Tavern. The brick smells of damp earth and old smoke. From here you can watch the street without being easily seen, a habit ingrained by years of service. The tavern is a known hive of revolutionary sentiment, but your orders are simply to maintain a presence, not to provoke. The rain muffles the sounds of the town, creating a private, enclosed world under the arch. It is in this quiet that you hear the voices. They are low, urgent, coming from the narrow alley behind the tavern. You press yourself back against the cold brick, your body going still, every sense honed by instinct. The patrol routes have changed, a man's voice says, taut with anxiety. The Hessians are unpredictable. They've doubled the watch near the magazine. It makes no difference, a second, calmer voice replies. The delivery is not goods. They won't be looking for barrels or crates. It's paper. Dispatches from Philadelphia. Your breath catches in your throat. Dispatches. From the Continental Congress. This is not about smuggled tea or French wine. This is the nerve center of the rebellion. He's still willing to take them? The first man asks. The risk is immense. He knows, says the second. He'll be waiting at the cooperage. After the final bell tolls from the Bruton Parish Church. The tide will be high on the creek then. His skiff will be ready. We just need to get the packet to him. Quote, Godspeed then, the first voice murmurs, and God help us all if you're caught. Quote, the voices fade as the men move away, their footsteps squelching in the mud. You remain frozen in the archway, the rain dripping from the brim of your tricorn hat. The cooperage, the final bell, a skiff on the creek. The information is a burning coal in your mind, specific, actionable, and deadly. Your duty is clear. It is a straight, unwavering line. You are to report this to Sergeant Richter, who will take it to Major von Kneighausen. A squad of Jaegers would be dispatched. They would hide in the darkness around the cooperage, their rifles silent and waiting. They would catch the courier, seize the dispatches. The men from the alley, the man with the skiff, they would all be taken. They would be interrogated, imprisoned in the jail just down the street. Or worse, hanged as spies. It would be a significant blow to the rebels. It would be a commendation for you, perhaps a promotion. It would be proof of your loyalty, your value. It would be your job. You push yourself off the wall, your boots heavy, and start walking, but your feet do not carry you toward the officers' quarters. They move without direction, taking you down a side street lined with darkened homes. The weight of the choice presses down on you, heavier than your rain-soaked coat. You think of the contract. The gold paid to your prince, the small portion of which makes its way to your family. You picture your mother's hands, worn from a lifetime of work, counting the coins you send. This duty feeds them. It keeps them safe, an ocean away. To betray it is to betray them. But then you see Delia's face, her clear, gray eyes filled not with hate, but with a sorrowful understanding. He pays you to fight his own children. You see the blacksmith's defiant stare, the mother's protective hand. What were in those dispatches? Were they pleas for aid? Reports on the state of their fledgling army? Or were they filled with the same ideas Delia spoke of rights, of a government that serves its people? Ideas that felt so dangerous, and yet so profoundly, frighteningly right. To report them would be to snuff out a candle of hope in a very dark room. You would be the instrument of a king you do not know, crushing people whose desperate courage you are beginning to admire. Your wandering steps lead you to the small, clapboard house that serves as your company's barracks. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of men, wet wool, and cheap tobacco. You find Henry sitting on his cot, meticulously cleaning his bayonet with an oiled rag. He looks up as you enter, his brow furrowed with concern at your drenched state. "Hannah, you look like you've seen a ghost," he says, his voice low. "Perhaps I have," you mutter, shedding your coat and slumping onto the cot opposite him. The straw-filled mattress rustles beneath you. You stare at the rough-hewn floorboards, unable to meet his gaze. "Henry," you begin, your voice barely a whisper, "do you ever wonder if what we are doing here is wrong?" Quote. He stops his cleaning, his knuckles white around the rag. He glances around the barracks, but the other men are preoccupied with cards or sleep. "Be quiet," he hisses, his usual independence replaced by a sharp fear. That is not soldiers' talk. That is rebel talk. "But listen," you insist, leaning forward. "They are not monsters. They are just people. They want things that make sense. To not have soldiers in their homes. To not be taxed by men they have never met. Is that so unreasonable?" Quote. Henry sets the bayonet down with a sharp click. "It is not our place to decide what is reasonable," he says, his voice firm but his eyes betraying a deep unease. "We signed a contract. Our prince signed a contract. We are here to fight the king's enemies. That is the beginning and the end of it. Thinking beyond that is a path to the gallows." He reaches out, his hand gripping your arm. "Hannah, what is this? That woman you spoke to earlier? What did she say to you?" Quote. "She told the truth," you say, the words tasting of rebellion themselves. "She told her truth," Henry counters, his grip tightening. "And her truth could get you killed. Think of home. Think of our family. Our pay's all they have. Do not throw your life away for the philosophy of a traitor." Quote. His words are a splash of icy water, meant to shock you back to your senses, back to the safety of obedience, but they have the opposite effect. In his fear, you see the cage you are both in. A cage built of contracts and duty, paid for in blood. He is right to be afraid. But you are no longer sure that the danger outside the cage is any worse than the rot within it. You pull your arm away gently. "I have to stand watch in an hour," you say, your voice flat, devoid of emotion. You have your answer. You are alone in this. Later, standing your post near the powder magazine, the rain has eased to a persistent drizzle. The Bruton parish church bell tolls the late hour, each clang echoing in the damp air. The final bell. Your heart hammers against your ribs. Any minute now, a patrol will come by on their way to the edge of town. They will not be heading for the cooperage. No one knows about that but you. But their route will take them close, too close. Headlights bob in the distance. Sergeant Richter and 3 other men, their footfalls splashing in the puddles. They are the roving patrol. Richter stops in front of you, his face a grim slab in the lantern light. "Anything to report, Irwin?" Quote. This is it. The moment stretches, thin and fragile. You can tell him. You can point them toward the cooperage and seal the fate of the men in the alley. It is the safe choice, the loyal choice. You look past him, into the darkness that cloaks this town. You think of Delia Barnes, tending her broken herbs, insisting that life tries to grow back. A seed of doubt she had planted. And you realize in this cold, wet Virginia night that it is up to you to give it a chance to grow. You clear your throat, forcing your voice to be steady. "Ja, Sergeant," you say, your German accent suddenly thicker, a useful tool. 2 men. I saw them not 10 minutes ago, hurrying toward the old Capitol building. They looked spooked. One was carrying a satchel. Richter's eyes narrow. The ruins of the old Capitol were a frequent meeting spot for vagrants and petty smugglers. A plausible location. "A satchel? Did you challenge them?" Quote, "I was about to, but they slipped into the shadows by the south wall," you lie, gesturing with your musket in the completely wrong direction, away from the creek, away from the cooperage. "They were moving fast. Looked like they were heading for the woods beyond." The sergeant grunts, weighing your words. You are a reliable soldier. You have never given him reason to doubt you. "The Capitol, you say? Good work, Irwin. We'll sweep the area." He turns to his men. "You heard her. Let's move. Maybe we'll catch some of these rebel rats away from their holes." He claps you on the shoulder, a gesture of approval that feels like a brand. "Keep sharp." You nod, your face an unreadable mask as they march away, their lanterns shrinking into the darkness, heading east. You are left alone in the quiet, listening to the drip of water and the frantic beating of your own heart. You turn your head and face west, toward the unseen creek, toward the cooperage. You have done it. You have lied. You have chosen a side. The weight of your new loyalty, a loyalty to something other than a king or a contract, settles upon you. It is terrifying. And for the first time in a long time, it feels like grace. The night swallows the sound of their marching boots, leaving you in a profound and ringing silence. The only sounds are the dripping of rain from the eaves and the distant gurgling sigh of the creek. You lied. The words, so simple in their construction, feel monumental. You didn't just admit a truth. You forged a new one, sending your own men on a fool's errand to protect an enemy you've never met. It is an act of treason, pure and simple. A line has been crossed, not drawn in the mud of a Williamsburg street, but etched into your very soul. You feel a strange lightness, a terrifying freedom that comes from stepping off a cliff, not yet knowing if you will fly or fall. For a long moment, you simply stand in the dark, breathing the damp air, letting the magnitude of your choice settle over you. You are no longer just a gear in the great machine of war. You have become a wrench, thrown into its works. The following days are a study in paranoia. Every glance from a fellow soldier feels like an accusation. Every sharp question from Sergeant Richter makes your stomach clench. He had praised you again the next morning. "Good instincts, Irwin," he'd said, slapping a dusty glove against his thigh. "Led us on a merry chase, but it keeps the rebels on their toes, thinking we know their bolt holes." You had simply nodded, the lie a cold lump in your throat. Henry watches you with a worried, probing gaze. He asks if you are ill, if the Virginia damp has settled in your lungs. You brush him off with excuses of fatigue, creating a chasm between you that widens with every passing day. You are utterly alone. This isolation drives you. You know that to survive, you cannot remain a solitary traitor. Your lie about the courier was a single, desperate act. To make a difference, to protect yourself, you need allies. You need Delia Barnes. You begin altering your patrol routes, using the minor authority your reliability has earned you to pass by the public jail more frequently. For 2 days, you see nothing. The herb patch is empty, trampled further by careless boots. Then, on the 3rd day, you see her. She is not in the garden, but emerging from a small bakery, a flour-dusted sack in her arms. You time your approach, letting 2 women in bonnets pass between you before you fall into step beside her. "Mrs. Barnes," you say, your voice low. She doesn't startle. Her eyes flick to you, then back to the street ahead. "Soldier," she replies, her tone perfectly neutral, giving nothing away. "The herbs," you say, grasping for the right words. They did not grow back. A flicker of something, understanding perhaps, crosses her face. "The soil is soured," she says, her voice still a public murmur. "Sometimes you must find a new place to plant, one that is better protected." Her gaze drifts for a second toward the cooper's shop near the edge of town before returning to the path ahead. It's a hint, a test. And how does one find such a place? You press, your heart thudding. "One follows the signs," she says cryptically. "A barrel set outside a shop with the lid facing east. Tomorrow, an hour after the noon bell." She gives you a final searching look, her gray eyes weighing you, judging you. Be careful who you trust, Hannah Irwin. A misplaced word is more dangerous than a misplaced musket ball. She then turns without another word and disappears into a narrow lane, leaving you with the scent of fresh bread and the chill of conspiracy. The next day, the hour after the noon bell, finds you on a seemingly aimless patrol. The barrel is there, just as she said, outside the cooperage. The lid faces east. It's a simple, undeniable signal. Taking a steadying breath, you slip into the alley beside the shop. The air is thick with the smell of wet oak and wood shavings. The back door is slightly ajar. You push it open and step inside. The interior is a cavern of shadows and half-finished barrels. Light streams in dusty shafts from high, grimy windows. Delia is not alone. The blacksmith you saw before is there, his powerful arms crossed over his chest, his face a mask of suspicion. An older man with the ink-stained fingers of a printer stands beside him. Delia stands near a workbench, her hands folded. There is no welcome in their eyes, only intense, silent scrutiny. "You came," Delia states, her voice stripped of its earlier gentleness. Here, in the shadows, she is not just a gardener. She is a commander. "You told me to," you reply, keeping your hands away from your musket, letting it rest easy against your shoulder. "Why?" the blacksmith grunts, his voice a low rumble. "What does a Hessian want with us?" Quote, "This is the real test. Your life may depend on your answer." "I was at the magazine 2 nights ago," you say. your voice even, betraying none of the fear churning inside you. Sergeant Richter's patrol came by. I sent them to the old capital. The printer's eyes widened slightly. The blacksmith's hostile stare-wavers, they know. They know what happened, or rather, what didn't happen at the creek. You could be lying, the blacksmith says, though with less conviction. Trying to infiltrate us. Quote, you could be, you counter, meeting his gaze, but I think we all have too much to lose for games. I am a soldier. My job is to see and to report what I see. I can report what is true, or I can report what is useful. You look at Delia. Your dispatches reached the skiff. That should be proof enough. Quote, a long silence stretches, filled only by the drip of water from the leaky roof. Delia studies your face, searching for any hint of deceit. Finally, she gives a slow, almost imperceptible nod. We're not murderers, Hannah. We're not spies in the way your commanders think. We are neighbors, sharing news, trying to keep one another safe. Your news is treason to my commanders, you state plainly, and my presence here is treason to my prince. Then we have a common understanding of the risks, the printer says, his voice dry. What information do you have? Quote, and so it begins. You become a creature of two worlds. By day, you are Hannah Irwin, the reliable Hessian mercenary. You stand guard, you march patrol, you clean your weapons. You provide reports to Sergeant Richter, carefully curated reports. You tell him of the colonists' growing resentment, of whispers of defiance you overhear at the market, of scrawled broadsheets found pasted to the tavern walls. It is all true, but it is vague. It is the smoke, not the fire. You give him nothing he can act upon, but enough to maintain his trust in your diligence. By night, or in the stolen moments in shadowed alleys and dusty storerooms, you are a whisper in the network. You learn their methods. A blue ribbon tied to a specific fence post means a message is waiting. A book left on a church pew, a copy of Common Sense hidden inside a hymnal. The blacksmith, you learn, is named Samuel. The printer is Mr. Green. There are others. A tavern maid who listens to the loose talk of British officers, a young boy who runs errands, his memory a perfect ledger of faces and times. And always, at the center, Delia Barnes, her quiet strength the hub of the entire wheel. You feed them what you can. You memorize the new patrol rotations and draw them on scraps of paper that Mr. Green burns after studying. You report on the arrival of supply wagons, not just their existence, but their contents. 4 crates of ammunition, 2 of medical supplies, you might whisper to Samuel as he pretends to inspect your boot buckle. The guard is heavy, but they will stop at the James City ferry. The road there is isolated. Quote, you never see the results directly, but you feel the ripples. One day, Major von Kniphausen storms through the barracks, his face puce with fury. A shipment of salt beef and hardtack, vital for an upcoming expedition, has vanished from a secure warehouse. An investigation turns up nothing but a broken lock and embarrassed guards. Later that week, you see the tavern maid slipping a small, grease-stained package to a woman whose children look thin and hungry. You say nothing. You just watch. A ghost in the machine, and feel the terrifying, exhilarating weight of your influence. You are diverting the king's resources, one small act of sabotage at a time, ensuring your survival by making yourself indispensable to the people who could expose you. This war is no longer a contract. It has become your own. The quiet dance of your double life could not last forever. The tension, coiled tight in your chest for weeks, finally snaps on a Tuesday. It isn't a raid or a captured courier that brings your world crashing down, but the worried eyes of your own kin. Henry corners you behind the barracks, his face pale and drawn in the dying light. He has been watching you, his concern curdling into a fear so profound it makes him tremble. I know what you are doing, Hannah, he says, his voice a raw whisper. He doesn't need to elaborate. I have seen you. The way you walk your patrols, the people you speak to, the blacksmith, the printer's wife. You think I am a fool. Quote, Henry, stay out of this, you warn, your voice low and hard. You don't understand. I understand that you are signing your own death warrant. He hisses, grabbing your arm. His grip is surprisingly strong. For what? For them? For these rebels who would see us all dead. I saw the Major's face after that supply wagon went missing. He is hunting for a leak. A traitor. He will hang whoever it is from the highest tree in Williamsburg as an example. Do you want that to be you? Quote, you look into his eyes, and you see not just fear for you, but for himself. He is tied to you by blood. Your treason would stain him too. He is trapped, and in his panic he is becoming dangerous. I made a choice, you say, pulling your arm free. Let me live with it. Quote, no, he says, a terrible finality in his tone. He takes a step back, his face a mask of desperate resolve. I will not let you throw our family's name, our very lives, into a fire for these people. I will not let you. He turns and walks away, his back ramrod straight, marching not toward the barracks, but toward Duke of Gloucester Street, toward the commandeered house, toward Major von Kniphausen. You watch him go, a cold dread washing over you. The music has stopped. The dance is over. You do not have to wait long. Less than an hour later, as you stand numbly by your cot, Sergeant Richter enters the barracks. His face, usually just grim, is carved from granite. He doesn't shout. He doesn't make a scene. He simply walks to you, his eyes holding a universe of disappointment and cold fury. The Major wants to see you, Irwin, he says, his voice lethally quiet. Now, bring your musket. The order is a formality. You are already a prisoner. The walk to the house is the longest of your life. Every colonist who sees you escorted by the stony-faced sergeant averts their gaze, but you can feel their curiosity, their fear. You pass the public jail and the patch of bare earth where Delia's herbs once grew. You pass the bakery, the tavern, all the points on the secret map of your other life. The grand brick house looms, a monument to your first sin in this town, now ready to be the stage for your last. They do not take you to the parlor. You are marched straight to the Major's study, a room paneled in dark wood and smelling of beeswax and expensive brandy. Major von Kniphausen is behind a large mahogany desk, his uniform immaculate, his expression withering. Sergeant Richter stands by the door, a silent, immovable guard. And in the corner, near the fireplace, stands Henry. He will not look at you. He just stares at the floor, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. He is the ghost at your court-martial. Soldier, the Major begins, his German crisp and sharp. He does not afford you the courtesy of English. You have been a trusted member of this company. Reliable, diligent. I am told your instincts are keen. He lets the word hang in the air. So keen, in fact, that you knew to send a patrol on a wild goose chase to the old capital, while rebel spies spirited away vital intelligence right under our noses. Quote, your blood runs cold, he knows. You have been feeding them information for weeks, he continues, his voice rising with controlled rage. Patrol routes, supply shipments, our strength, our movements. You, a Hessian soldier, bound by oath to your Landgrave and by contract to King George. He leans forward, his eyes boring into you. You have betrayed your comrades. You have betrayed your prince. You have betrayed your own blood. He gestures dismissively toward Henry. You remain silent, your mind racing. There is no escape. Denial is pointless. The presence of your own kinsman is the final, damning piece of evidence against you. We found this in your bedding, Richter says, his voice flat. He steps forward and places a small object on the Major's desk. It's a book, your book of German poetry. He flips it open. Tucked inside is a thin, folded piece of paper. A map, hastily drawn, showing the guard positions around the town's main warehouse. Your handwriting. A foolish mistake, a moment of carelessness born from exhaustion and the constant strain. You have forfeited your life, the Major says, his voice dropping to a calm, terrifying pronouncement. There will be a trial, of course, a formality, and then you will be hanged, so that every soldier and every rebel in this godforsaken town knows the price of treason. He nods to Richter. Take her to the cellar. Post a guard. I want her watched every second until the sun rises. Quote, Richter grabs your arm, his grip like iron. As he pulls you from the room, you finally meet Henry's eyes. They are filled with a wretched, tearing agony. He did this to save you, and he has only succeeded in damning you. You feel a surge of pity for him that eclipses your own terror. The cellar is cold and damp, smelling of earth and spoiled wine. It is a small, stone-walled room, empty save for a few broken crates. A single Jaeger stands guard outside the heavy oak door, his rifle held at the ready. You are left alone in the near-total darkness, with nothing but the certainty of the dawn and the gallows it will bring. You slide down the cold wall, the stone leaching the warmth from your body. Is this how it ends? Not in battle, but in a dark hole. Condemned by your own brother? You think of Delia. You hope your capture hasn't compromised her. You hope she knows to scatter, to disappear. Hours pass. The silence is broken only by the drip of water somewhere in the darkness and the shuffle of the guard's boots outside. Then, another sound filters down from the house above. A shout. Then another, more frantic. The smell hits you next. Faint at first, then acrid and sharp. Smoke. You scramble to your feet, your heart pounding. The shouts upstairs grow into a panicked chorus. You hear the crash of something heavy, the splintering of wood. The guard outside your door curses, his attention torn. Suddenly, the bar on your door is lifted with a loud crack, and the door is flung open. It is not a soldier. It is Samuel the blacksmith, his face grimed with soot, a wild light in his eyes. In his hand he holds a heavy iron poker, its tip glowing faintly. "The tavern maid sends her regards," he grunts. Flashed a grease fire in the kitchen. The whole back wing is going up. "Come on!" Quote. He doesn't wait for an answer. He shoves you out into the cellar corridor. The guard is just turning, his eyes wide with shock, but Samuel is faster. The poker swings in a silent, brutal arc, and the guard crumples to the floor without a sound. "Go!" Samuel hisses, pointing toward a narrow set of stairs leading to the outside. "The creek, north side, by the old willow. Delia is waiting. Now go!" Quote. You don't hesitate. You scramble up the rough stone steps and burst out into the night. The air is thick with smoke and confusion. Red light flickers against the neighboring buildings as the fire takes hold of the house's wooden frame. Soldiers and servants are shouting, running with buckets. The chaos is a perfect cloak. You tear the blue coat of your uniform from your shoulders, throwing the damning evidence into a dark hedge. In your simple shirt and breeches, you are just another shadow in a town of shadows. You run. Not like a soldier on patrol, but like a deer with wolves at its heels. You stick to the alleys, your feet knowing the way by heart. The sounds of the fire and the alarm bells fade behind you as you reach the edge of town. The cool, damp air of the creek fills your lungs. You find the old willow, its branches weeping over the dark, gurgling water. A figure detaches itself from the shadows. It's Delia. She presses a heavy cloth bundle into your arms. "Samuel did well," she says, her voice urgent but steady. "There is no time. They will realize this was a rescue, not just a fire. They will be hunting you by morning." You open the bundle. Inside are a man's rough spun trousers and shirt, a pair of worn boots, a small purse heavy with coins, and a chunk of bread wrapped in cheesecloth. A new life, hastily assembled. "Follow the creek west until you reach the Chickahominy," she instructs, her hand gripping your shoulder. Her touch is firm, grounding. There's a patriot encampment under the command of a Colonel Lafayette. They are expecting a, quote, recruit from the city. Give them the name, Grace. It will be enough. Quote, "Henry," you whisper, the name tasting like ash. "He is the one who told them." Quote. A deep sadness crosses Delia's face. "I know. The tavern maid heard his confession to the major. Fear makes people do terrible things." She looks you in the eye, her gaze intense. "That life is over, Hannah. The soldier you were is dead. The family you had is lost to you. You are a fugitive now. Your only family is the cause. Our cause." You nod, the truth of her words settling into your bones. You look back toward the town, where a pillar of smoke rises into the night sky, a funeral pyre for the person you used to be. You have no contract now, no prince, no home to send money to. You have only the clothes on your back, a new name, and a loyalty forged in secrets and sealed in fire. It is terrifying. And as you turn your back on Williamsburg and melt into the Virginia wilderness, you feel the undeniable razor-sharp edge of freedom. The wilderness is a lie. The path west to the Chickahominy and Lafayette's army is a distant promise, a destination for a future that has not yet been earned. Your immediate survival lies not in the trackless forest, but back in the belly of the beast. Delia leads you not toward the river, but on a circuitous route through darkened gardens and sleeping backyards, doubling back toward the very town from which you just fled. The smoke from the fire is a bitter incense in the air, a guiding beacon for your retreat into the heart of the conflict. Your new life as Grace begins in a cramped, musty space behind the false back wall of Mr. Green's print shop, a room filled with stacks of old paper, the ghost scent of ink, and the suffocating reality of confinement. For days, this small, dark space is your entire world. You eat the bread and cheese Delia gave you, sipping sparingly from a jug of water. You listen to the sounds of the shop through the wall, the rhythmic clank and slide of the printing press, the murmur of customers, the sharp-clipped German of Hessian patrols passing on the street. Each time you hear your native tongue, you freeze, your body tensing for a blow that never comes. You are a ghost, haunting the edges of your own former life, and the isolation is a physical weight. The soldier in you, accustomed to open-air drills and the clear lines of a battlefield, chafes against the confinement. The woman in you, the one who took comfort in a book of poetry, grieves for the lost sky. Delia is your only link to the world. She visits after dark, a candle stub lighting the weary lines on her face. She brings food, news, and purpose. "The fire was a success," she whispers one night, her voice filled with grim satisfaction. The Major is convinced it was an accident. They are too busy salvaging records and cursing their luck to organize a proper manhunt. They think you burned with the house or fled into the woods. Let them. She tells you about Henry. He was questioned, his story of your treason now seeming like a panicked fiction in the face of the fire. He has been confined to barracks, disgraced and ostracized. A tool used and discarded. You feel a cold, hollow pity for him, an emotion as distant and pale as the moon. Then, one evening in early July, Delia comes not with food, but with a piece of paper. Her eyes burn with a light you have never seen before, a zeal that transcends the weariness of war. Samuel the blacksmith and Mr. Green are with her, their faces equally rapt. They cram into your small hiding space, the air suddenly charged with an electric tension. "It has come," Mr. Green says, his ink-stained fingers trembling as he holds the broadsheet. "From Philadelphia, the Congress has finally done it." Quote. He begins to read aloud, his printer's voice giving weight and rhythm to the words. You lean forward, catching phrases that seem to ignite the dusty air. When in the course of human events, truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Quote, the words are a revelation. They are not just the quiet philosophy of a woman in a garden. They are a public declaration, a line drawn for all the world to see. In Hesse, your life was defined by duty, station, and the unassailable will of the prince. The idea that anyone was born with rights that no king or prince could take away is so revolutionary, it feels like a physical shock. Mr. Green continues reading the list of grievances against the king, and you recognize your own work in the shadows of the text, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. For cutting off our trade, he is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny. Foreign mercenaries. He means you. The word stings, but for the first time you understand it not as an insult, but as a political fact. One more grievance in a long list that has led to this irrevocable break. When he finishes, a profound silence fills the room. It is the sound of a world changing. He will print it, Delia says, looking at Mr. Green. Copies for Williamsburg, for every farm and village we can reach. Quote, It is treason of the highest order, Samuel rumbles, but his eyes are gleaming. It is also the truest thing I have ever heard. The declaration's echo is not a whisper, it is a cannon blast. In the days that follow, you witness its impact from the slivers of the world you are allowed to see. Through a crack in the storeroom door, you watch a jubilant crowd gather in front of the courthouse. You see men climbing ladders, cheering as they pry the royal coat of arms from the pediment and dash it to pieces on the cobblestones below. The sound of the splintering wood is the sound of a final, snapped tie to the old world. A bonfire is lit in the middle of Duke of Gloucester Street, and people dance around it, their faces illuminated by the defiant flames, singing patriotic songs that are raw and new. This new reality, however, has a brutal edge. The city, once merely occupied, is now a place of civil war. Neighbor turns against neighbor. Disguised in a simple bonnet and a shawl Delia procured for you, you venture out on a risk-laden walk to gather information. You are Grace, a cousin of the printer's wife, seeking herbs. The disguise feels thin, Your posture still too military, your gaze too sharp. You see a man you recognize as a loyalist merchant dragged from his shop, his face bloodied, his pleas for reason lost in the jeers of the crowd. They accuse him of hoarding salt, of spying for the governor. His shop is ransacked, its contents liberated for the cause. You stand in the crowd, your stomach churning. It is the commandeering all over again, but this time, it is done in the name of liberty. You see the same fear on the merchant's wife's face that you saw on the woman whose house your officers took. The war, you realize, does not care which side holds the banner. It only demands its pound of flesh. Your life becomes a grim rhythm of survival. You cannot stay in the print shop forever. It is too great a risk for the greens. You move to a hayloft above Samuel's smithy, the air hot and thick with the smell of coal smoke and horses. From there, you can watch the British supply yard. Your skills, honed for a Hessian prince, are now repurposed for the rebellion. You are no longer just a source of information. You are a strategist. You observe the changing of the guard, noting their timing, their complacency. You sketch maps of the yard's layout in the dirt of the loft floor, showing Samuel where the fence is weakest, where the shadows are deepest at night. A week later, 2 barrels of gunpowder and a crate of surgical tools disappear from that yard. You become a mender, a fixer, a creature of the Twilight Network. When a young Patriot messenger is shot in the leg trying to slip past a patrol, it is you who directs his rescuers to an abandoned smokehouse. It is your knowledge of field dressings, learned on bloody European battlefields, that helps Delia clean and bind the wound. You show her how to use a poultice of yarrow, one of the few herbs still growing wild by the creek, to stave off infection. As you work by the light of a single shielded lantern, the boy groaning softly, you feel the strange shift inside you. You are using the skills of a soldier not to take a life, but to save one. It is a new kind of duty, one that doesn't curdle the soul. Food is a constant struggle. The British Army seizes what it needs, and the Patriot embargo on the city means little gets in. Hunger gnaws at the edges of life in Williamsburg. The faces on the street grow thinner, the joyous defiance of July hardening into the grim resolve of autumn. You learn to read the signs of desperation. You learn to be invisible. You use the few coins Delia gave you to buy a small measure of cornmeal from a farmer at a clandestine market, stretching it with powdered acorns to make a thin, gritty porridge that you share with a widow and her children hiding in the room below your loft. They know you only as Grace, the quiet woman who appears with food and disappears without a word. Their silent, grateful eyes are a heavier currency than any coin the king ever paid. One evening, as you watch the sun set from a crack in the loft wall, painting the sky the color of a fading bruise, Samuel climbs up to join you. He hands you a piece of warm bread, a rare treasure. "The merchant," he says, following your gaze toward the shuttered shop of the man who was beaten. "The one they dragged out. His wife is ill. The boy, too. No one will sell them medicine." Quote, you look at him, at his powerful hands, stained with the soot of his trade. He had been part of the crowd that day, his face hard with revolutionary fervor. "Now you see only a troubled man." "Liberty shouldn't look like that," you say quietly, the English words feeling sure on your tongue. "No," he agrees, his voice low. "It shouldn't." He doesn't look at you. Delia has a plan. A way to get quinine from a sympathizer in Jamestown. But it requires a river crossing. At night, through the British patrols on the water. He is not just making conversation. This is a test. An offer. He is asking you to step further out of the shadows, to take on a risk far greater than observation. He is asking the soldier, not the fugitive, to act. You think of the Declaration, of its grand sweeping promises. Then you think of the merchant's wife, ill and abandoned, a victim of the very cause that is supposed to be her salvation. The echoes of grand declarations are faint in a sick room. What matters is the quiet work of living, of surviving, of showing grace. You finish the bread, the simple taste of balm. "Tell me about the patrols," you say, turning away from the sunset to face him. "And tell me what kind of boat you can get." The life of Hannah Irwin, Hessian mercenary, is over. The work of grace has just begun. The boat is a simple skiff, barely more than a coffin with oars, smelling of river mud and fish. Samuel has hidden it in a dense thicket of reeds where a small, forgotten tributary feeds the James. The plan, laid out by Delia in the hot, close air of the smithy, is simple in its objective and suicidal in its details. You and Samuel will row across the river under the cover of the new moon, hugging the south bank to avoid the channel where the British patrol cutters, shallow-drafted and swift, hunt for smugglers. You are to land a mile west of Jamestown, find a derelict fishing shack marked with a daub of white paint, and trade a small bag of silver for a packet of quinine from a man who will be waiting there. Then you must make it back before dawn. The man is a physician from Norfolk, Delia had explained, her voice a low murmur against the distant clang of Samuel's apprentice finishing his work. He despises the governor, but he is a man of science first. He cannot abide seeing medicine used as a weapon. Quote, "And the patrols?" you had asked, the soldier in you automatically calculating the risks. "Two cutters," Samuel grunted. "The Viper and the Leech. They move without lights. They listen. One stays mid-river, the other sweeps the banks. They alternate, but there is no predictable pattern." Quote, "Then we do not use the oars once we are in the open," you stated, your mind already picturing the dark water. "We use poles to push along the shallows. It is slower, but quieter, and we will wrap the poles in cloth." Quote, Samuel and Delia had exchanged a look. It was the look you were coming to recognize. An acknowledgement of the grim expertise you brought, a constant reminder that you were once the enemy. You are their weapon, and they are still learning how to aim you. Now, crouching in the damp reeds with Samuel, you are no longer a strategist. You are a participant. The night is starless and humid, the air thick with the drone of insects. You hand Samuel the strips of burlap you tore from a feed sack, and he wraps them expertly around the ends of the long poles he fashioned. Every movement is deliberate, hushed. To be caught is not just to be hanged. It is to expose everyone. The printer, the blacksmith, the tavern maid, the doctor from Norfolk. A whole constellation of defiance extinguished because of one misplaced splash, one careless cough. Pushing off into the current is like slipping into oblivion. The black water swallows the skiff, and the shore recedes into an undifferentiated line of shadow. The only sounds are the gentle lapping of water against the hull and the soft, rhythmic push of the poles into the muddy riverbed. Your eyes, accustomed to the discipline of the night watch, scan the darkness, seeking any shape that is blacker than the surrounding black, any ripple that is not made by the current. An hour passes in this tense, silent labor. Your shoulders ache, and the damp chill of the river seeps into your bones, a familiar misery. Then you hear it. The faint, rhythmic splash of oars professionally wielded. "Down," you hiss, your voice barely a breath. Samuel understands instantly, and you both flatten yourselves to the bottom of the skiff, the cold, fishy water soaking through your trousers. You risk a glance over the gunwale. It is the Leech, a long, sleek shape sliding through the water 50 yards out, propelled by 6 oarsmen. You can just make out the silhouette of the Marine in the bow, his musket held at the ready. They are closer to the bank than you expected. You hold your breath, praying the current doesn't pull your small boat out from the cover of the overhanging bank. The oarlocks creak, a sound that seems as loud as a cannon shot in the stillness. They pass, oblivious, a ghost ship crewed by other men paid to fight for a king. The moment they are gone, you are moving again, poling, with a new, desperate urgency. The White Mark shack is exactly where Delia said it would be. You drag the skiff onto a muddy patch of sand and approach with Samuel, every sense on fire. The door creaks open before you reach it. A small, nervous man with spectacles and a gaunt face gestures you inside. He doesn't speak. Samuel hands him the purse of coins. The man weighs it, then pushes a tightly wrapped oilcloth packet into your hands. The entire exchange takes less than a minute. As you turn to leave, the man speaks, his voice a dry whisper. "Tell Delia the wagon wheels," her man respoked, "for the artillery train in Portsmouth collapsed on the Great Bridge Road. Delayed them a full day." He gives a thin, joyless smile. "Wood wasn't properly seasoned, I imagine." Quote, "You and Samuel say nothing, but the information settles between you. The network is larger, its tendrils longer than you knew. It isn't just about passing messages. It's about active sabotage carried out by unseen hands in distant towns. A Cooper you have never met, a wheelwright you will never know, all fighting with their skills. The journey back is a blur of exhaustion and fear. You regain the hayloft just as the sky is beginning to pale in the east, your muscles screaming in protest, your clothes soaked and stinking of the river, but clutched in your hand is the packet. It is a victory, small and secret, but more meaningful than any commendation you ever received in the Hessian army. That success is a key, unlocking a deeper level of trust. You are no longer just a fugitive being hidden, you are an asset being deployed. Delia begins to show you the finer workings of their machine. One afternoon, she brings you a fine linen handkerchief, freshly laundered and pressed. "For Mrs. Gable," she says, pointing to the delicate embroidered flower in the corner. Her husband is the finest tailor in Williamsburg. He is currently making a new dress uniform for General Cornwallis's aide. You look closer. The number of petals on the flower, 7, and the number of leaves on the stem, 3, are not random. 700 new muskets arriving on the 3rd of next month, Delia translates, passed on by the aide's own valet, who resents being treated like a dog by his master. Quote, "It is a stunningly simple, elegant piece of espionage, a web of grievances and loyalties, woven into the very fabric of the occupied city. You begin to see it everywhere. The young boy you helped save, his leg now healed, darts across the market square, seemingly chasing a stray dog, but you see the folded note he drops into a fishwife's empty basket. The fishwife, in turn, complains loudly about the price of salt to a farmer, weaving a coded message about patrol numbers into her tirade. It is a city of whispers, a symphony of defiance played just below the hearing of the occupiers. Your own role evolves. Your observations of the supply yard become more than just reports. They become attack plans. You watch the flow of goods, the routines of the guards, the state of the fences. You know which sentries are lazy, which ones drink on duty, which corner of the yard is obscured from the main guardhouse by a tall stack of barrels. You are a predator learning the habits of its prey. Their grain, you tell Samuel one evening, the smoky air of the forge a welcome heat after a day of damp chill. They store the oats for the cavalry horses in canvas sacks, not barrels. They are kept in the open shed by the west fence. Quote, Samuel stops hammering a glowing horseshoe and looks at you, his face lit by the fire. Stealing it is too risky. The shed is guarded. We don't steal it, you say, the idea taking shape, cold and practical. We ruin it. A few handfuls of sand in each sack, not enough to be noticed at a glance. But when the horses eat it, they will sicken. A column of cavalry is useless if half its horses are colic-ridden and weak. Quote, Samuel stares at you, his hammer forgotten. This is a new kind of warfare, not the noble clash of armies, but the insidious, grinding work of sabotage. It is the warfare of the weak against the strong. It is your warfare. It could work, he says slowly, a grim respect dawning in his eyes. The guard changes at 2. There is a 10-minute window where the new man is settling in. Quote, The raid is a masterpiece of silent, coordinated terror. You and Samuel, your faces blackened with soot, slip through a gap in the fence you had previously loosened. The night is moonless. Every scrape of a boot on gravel sounds like a gunshot to your own ears. While Samuel stands watch, his heavy hammer a brutal-looking weapon, you move from sack to sack, your hands working quickly, slitting a small hole with a knife, pouring in a pouch of sand, and pressing the hole closed. It is methodical, cold, and deeply personal. You think of the Hessian dragoons you served with, how they cared for their mounts better than they cared for themselves. You are poisoning these animals to cripple the men who ride them. It is an ugly act, and necessary. As you slip back through the fence and melt into the darkness, you do not feel triumphant. You feel like a soldier. You have identified a vulnerability and exploited it. The only difference is that you chose the mission yourself. Your allegiance is no longer to a prince or a contract, but to the desperate, breathing network of hidden helpers, and to the fragile, blood-soaked idea of a nation being born in the shadows. The first sign of your success is the cursing. From your vantage point in the hayloft, peering through a knot in the wood, you watch the chaos in the cavalry yard. Hessian dragoons, men whose pride was measured in the gloss of their horse's coat, led limping, miserable animals from the stables. An officer, his face the color of spoiled ham, screams at a veterinarian who can only shrug in helpless frustration. The horses refuse their oats, their stomachs churning from the sand you so carefully mixed into their feed. A planned patrol into the countryside to harry patriot militias is delayed, then canceled. The men are grounded, angry, and confused, blaming the damp Virginia climate, the poor quality of colonial grain, anything but the truth. You watch them, and for the first time, you understand that sabotage is a language your former comrades can hear, even if they cannot comprehend who is speaking. It is an ugly victory, but it is a victory nonetheless. Your value to the network solidifies. You are no longer just a fugitive to be protected. You are a weapon to be wielded. But weapons need maintenance, and networks need to communicate. The British, rattled by the fire and the sudden sickness of their horses, are tightening their grip. More sentries are posted, curfews are more brutally enforced, and the casual whisper in the market now carries the risk of a bayonet point. Delia brings the problem to you one evening in the cramped heat of Samuel's smithy, the air sharp with the smell of quenched steel. "We are going deaf and dumb," she says, her face etched with worry in the flickering firelight. A note was found on a boy near the Raleigh Tavern. He was lucky. He swallowed it before they could read it, but he was whipped for his trouble. We cannot risk our people like that. We need a way to pass information that doesn't look like information. Quote, Samuel, wiping soot from his brow with a forearm, nods grimly. We need something that can be seen in plain sight but not understood. Quote, you are silent for a long moment, the heat of the forge warming your face. You think of your home in Hesse, a memory that feels like it belongs to another person. You think of your mother, her hands always dusted with flour, the way she would score the top of each loaf of rye bread before sliding it into the hot brick oven. Each family had its own mark. A simple slash, a cross, a spiral. It was a signature. An identity. Bread, you say, the word soft but clear over the hiss of the forge. Delia and Samuel look at you, confused. We need intelligence, Grace, not a bakery, Samuel grunts. It is the same thing, you insist, the idea blooming, fully formed in your mind. Everyone needs bread. Soldiers, colonists, everyone. No one looks twice at a woman carrying a loaf of bread. But we can make them look, we can make the bread speak. You scratch a shape in the dirt floor with a piece of charcoal, the marks a baker puts on the crust. The scoring. A crosshatch pattern could mean heavy patrols in the market. A single slash means a target is vulnerable. A spiral, a call for a meeting. We change the code weekly. It is simple, silent, and delicious. You look up at them, your eyes intense. And for a people who are starving for hope, a fresh loaf of bread is a powerful message all by itself. Quote, there is a dawning understanding on Delia's face, a slow smile that lights her tired features. The Liberty Loaf, she whispers, tasting the name. My God, Grace, it's perfect. Quote, the logistics are a challenge. You need an oven, flour, and a cover. Delia provides all three. You are moved from the hayloft to a small, drafty room behind the kitchen of the widow you had helped, a Mrs. Pembroke. She is a timid woman, her eyes perpetually wide with fear, but her loyalty to the cause is fierce. She lost a son at Bunker Hill. In exchange for a share of your baking and the protection your presence in her house might paradoxically afford, she allows you the use of her small, temperamental brick oven. Your new identity is cemented. You are Grace, a distant cousin from the countryside, come to help the poor widow by baking and selling bread. Your days fall into a new rhythm, one dictated not by a sergeant's whistle but by the needs of the yeast. You wake before dawn, your hands plunging into the coarse flour, a mix of precious wheat Delia procures and cheaper cornmeal. Kneading the dough is a physical, grounding act. You work out your fear, your loneliness, your anger into the yielding mass. Every push, fold, and turn is a small act of defiance. This is a different kind of soldiering. Your hands, once calloused from the rough stock of a musket, are now softened and strengthened by this life-giving work. The first batch is a test. You bake a dozen simple corn loaves. On 6 of them, you score a deep, straight line down the middle. It is the agreed-upon signal. A supply barge will be docking tonight at a poorly guarded wharf. The other 6 you leave plain. You wrap them in clean cloths and place them in a large wicker basket. Your first customer is the fishwife. She buys 2 loaves, one marked, one plain. She doesn't comment on the score, but her eyes meet yours for a fraction of a second, and you see understanding there. Later you see the tavern maid's younger brother buy a single marked loaf, tucking it under his arm as he whistles his way down the street, an image of pure innocence. By midday your basket is empty. You have armed the network with knowledge, and your only weapon was flour and fire. That night, a significant portion of the barge's cargo, kegs of salt pork and barrels of nails, vanishes into the Williamsburg night. Major von Kniphausen is furious. Another investigation is launched, and again, it finds nothing. The city is a sieve, and he cannot find the holes. The Liberty Loaf becomes an institution. Your system grows more complex, a silent language of baking. The type of flour signifies the information's origin. Wheat for intelligence from British officers, rye for news from the loyalist merchants, corn for troop movements. The scores are the message itself. And then there is the baker's dozen. 12 loaves are an ordinary transaction. But when a network member orders a baker's dozen, they receive 13 loaves. That 13th loaf, the extra one, the loaf of grace, signifies a message of the highest importance, or a piece of good news to bolster morale. It is a sign of bounty in a time of scarcity, a tangible piece of hope. You venture out yourself sometimes, cloaked in the anonymity of your apron and bonnet, to deliver to specific households. You bring a loaf to Mrs. Gable, the tailor's wife. The 4 small circles you pricked into the crust tell her that 4 Hessian officers will be at her husband's shop for fittings tomorrow, a prime opportunity for her to listen. You trade 2 loaves with a farmer for a small bag of potatoes, and the dusting of flour on the crusts warns him that the road to Yorktown is being heavily patrolled. You are the hub of a wheel, your small kitchen, the center from which all the spokes of information radiate. One afternoon, standing your post by the oven, Henry walks by. He is thinner, his uniform looking too large for him. He is still confined to menial duties, a pariah among the soldiers. He sees you in the doorway of the widow's house, a smudge of flour on your cheek. His eyes widen in disbelief, then fill with a complex storm of emotions, shock, relief, and a deep, bottomless shame. He starts to move toward you, his mouth opening as if to speak your real name. You give him a cold, flat stare, your expression that of a complete stranger, and slowly, deliberately, you turn your back on him and go inside, closing the door. You lean against the rough wood, your heart hammering. He is a ghost from a life you can no longer afford to remember. The success of your operation brings its own dangers. The bread is too good, too consistent. Soon, even the British are buying it. Sergeant Richter himself stops by one morning, his face impassive. "Frau Pembroke," he says, his German accent thick, "my men say the bread here is the best in the city. Tastes almost like home." Quote, your blood runs cold, but you simply nod and smile, playing the part of the simple-minded country cousin. "Cornmeal, and patience is all, sir," you murmur, handing him a perfectly plain, unmarked loaf. He pays you, his eyes lingering on your face for a beat too long, searching for something he can't name. The moment he leaves, your hands are trembling. You are hiding in his plain sight, feeding the very army you are working to undermine. A week later, Delia appears at your back door, her face pale. She doesn't speak, but simply places 13 fingers on the doorframe. A baker's dozen. The signal is for you. She has urgent, vital news. You wipe your hands on your apron and lead her to the small, private space of the garden. "It's about the declaration," she says, her voice a strained whisper. "The British command has compiled a list of everyone they suspect of printing or distributing it. They're planning a series of raids. Tonight, Mr. Green is at the top of the list." The news hits you like a physical blow. Mr. Green, the quiet, courageous printer who gave you your first sanctuary. His shop, with its clanking press, was the first true sound of the rebellion you ever heard. "And Samuel?" you ask, your voice tight. "His name is there too, and the tavern maid. And me." She looks at you, her gray eyes clear and unafraid. "They don't know about you. You are our only asset that is completely clean. Grace the baker is of no interest to them." Quote, you look past her, at the town settling into the rhythms of the evening. You can picture the squads of redcoats and Hessians, preparing, checking their muskets, ready to kick in doors and drag your friends into the darkness of the public jail. You have a choice. You can stay hidden, stay safe, and let the network be decapitated. Or you can act. The quiet baker can become the soldier once more. "How many men are assigned to the raids?" you ask, your voice devoid of emotion. Delia tells you the numbers, the targets, the rough timing gleaned from a terrified servant at the major's house. As she speaks, your mind is already working, moving pieces on a battlefield no one else can see. You are not just a baker. You are Hannah Irwin, a mercenary who understands patrol routes, guard rotations, and the precise application of force. And you are Grace, a whisper who knows the city's secret paths and hidden allies. Tonight, you will be both. Go home, Delia, you say, your voice calm and authoritative. Bar your door. Tell everyone on that list to disappear. I will handle the soldiers. You turn and walk back to your kitchen, the smell of baking bread filling the air. It is the scent of hope, and tonight, you will use it to buy your friends their lives. You do not storm the Major's house. You do not lead a charge. Your battlefield is the web of alleys, and the network of trust you have so carefully built, and your weapons are whispers and lies. You take a half-dozen of your freshest loaves, each one marked with the spiral, the call for an urgent meeting. You give them to the widow's boy, a wiry child of 10 with eyes that have seen too much. You press a coin into his hand. To the fishwife, stand, you command, your voice low and urgent. To the tavern, to the cooper's apprentice, run, do not stop. Quote. He vanishes into the twilight. Then you begin your own work. You take a bucket of greasy water from the kitchen and slip out the back, moving through the shadowed gardens toward the barracks. You know the path the Hessian raiding party will take. You find a steep, cobbled lane, slick with evening dew, and you empty the bucket, the greasy water creating a treacherous, invisible sheen on the stones. A simple trap, an accident waiting to happen. Next, you find the stable boy who sleeps in the loft near Samuel's smithy. You wake him with a shake and a piece of bread. There are redcoats asking for you. You lie, your face a mask of concern. They say you know about a cache of rebel muskets. The boy's face pales with terror. Run to the public magazine, you tell him. Shout that the rebels are trying to steal the powder. Make a scene. They will pay you for the warning. The city becomes your instrument. The fishwife, seeing the spiral on the loaf, starts a loud, panicked argument with a customer, creating a bottleneck in the market square that will delay one of the raiding parties. The cooper's apprentice accidentally rolls 2 heavy barrels from a loading dock into the path of another. The stable boy, terrified and eager to prove his loyalty, sprints toward the magazine, his panicked shouts drawing the attention of the main guard. From the widow's garden, you watch the chaos unfold. You see the Hessian squad slip and slide on the greasy cobblestones, their precise military formation dissolving into a heap of curses and bruised limbs. You hear the distant shouts and the ringing of an alarm bell from the direction of the magazine, a false fire drawing the town's emergency response in the wrong direction. The raids are a failure before they even begin. The soldiers arrive at their targets late, disorganized and flustered, only to find empty houses, cold hearths, and the lingering scent of fear. Mr. Green's press is silent. Samuel's forge is dark. Delia's home is just another quiet house on a street of quiet houses. Your friends have vanished into the fabric of the night, warned away by a boy with a basket of bread. The war grinds on. The autumn of raids gives way to a winter of hunger and cold. Your Liberty loaves become a currency of survival. The coded messages continue, but more often than not, the 13th loaf is simply given to a family with too many children and not enough food. You see the human cost of the conflict etched on every face. The bravado of the early days has been stripped away, leaving behind a hard, brittle resilience. You work, you bake, you listen. You are a fulcrum, a quiet point of balance in a city at war with itself. The soldier within you learns patience, the grim, long-suffering patience of a siege. Spring arrives, and with it a fragile sense of hope. The dogwoods bloom in a defiant spray of white. You plant a small herb garden behind the widow's house, a mirror of the one Delia once tended. You coax parsley, thyme, and rosemary from the stubborn soil. The simple act of making something grow feels like a prayer. You find yourself smiling more, the constant tension in your shoulders easing. You are no longer just surviving, you are living, building a life in the ruins of your old one. The war stays at a distance, a rumble of thunder on a far-off horizon. You hear news of battles in the north, of Patriot victories and British defeats. Then, one sweltering day in late September, the war comes home. Not with a raid, but with an army. The rumble becomes a roar. From the church steeple you can see the roads clogged with men, horses, and cannon. But these are not redcoats. They wear the blue and buff of the Continental Army and the crisp white uniforms of the French. They are marching on Yorktown, trapping Cornwallis and his army against the sea. Williamsburg transforms overnight. The occupying forces are now the besieged. The city holds its breath. For weeks, the days are punctuated by the distant, percussive boom of cannon fire from the south. It is a sound you know well, but for the first time, it does not fill you with dread. It sounds like hope, it sounds like an ending. And then, one cool October afternoon, it comes. A lone rider, his horse lathered in sweat, gallops down Duke of Gloucester Street, waving a dispatch. The cannons have fallen silent. He shouts a single word that electrifies the air, a word that travels from person to person like a flame leaping through dry grass. Surrendered! A moment of stunned silence, and then the city erupts. People pour from their homes, shouting, weeping, embracing strangers. The church bells begin to ring, not with the panicked clang of an alarm, but with a joyous, unrestrained peal. Mr. Green, his face streaked with tears and ink, emerges from his shop and throws his arms around Samuel. Delia stands on the courthouse steps, her hands clasped, a look of profound, weary gratitude on her face. You watch from the doorway of your small kitchen, a loaf of warm bread in your hands, and feel a release so complete it nearly brings you to your knees. The war is not over, but here, in Virginia, it is. The world has turned. The weeks that follow are a blur of change. The British and Hessian soldiers, their faces grim and defeated, march out of the city, prisoners of war. You watch them go, these men who were once your comrades. You see Sergeant Richter, his shoulders slumped. You even see Henry, his gaze sweeping the crowd, perhaps searching for you one last time. You feel nothing but a distant, sorrowful pity. They are ghosts, and you are no longer haunted by them. Life returns slowly, cautiously, like your herbs poking through the soil after a frost. The empty shops reopen. The farmers return to the market. The sounds of hammering are for rebuilding, not for forging weapons. The conversations in the street are open, free from fear. One clear, cool morning, you wake to a sound you realize you haven't truly heard in years. Birds. A chorus of them, singing in the oak tree outside your window, their notes clear and bright in the quiet air. The daily thunder of cannons has been replaced by the chirping of sparrows. You rise and go to your oven, your movements slow and deliberate. You mix the flour, you knead the dough. But today, there are no codes to score into the crust. There are no secret messages to send. You are simply a baker, making bread for her neighbors. Later, you take a stool out into your small garden. The sun is warm on your face. The air smells of damp earth and baking bread. Delia joins you, carrying 2 mugs of steaming herbal tea. She sits beside you, and for a long time, you say nothing, simply sharing the quiet peace of the morning. It will be a long road, building a nation, she says finally, her voice soft. There is much to be done. Quote, yes, you agree, watching a butterfly land on a sprig of thyme. What will you do now, Grace? She asks. It is the first time she has used the name when there was no one else to hear. It is your name now, earned and accepted. You look at your hands, dusted with a faint layer of flour. You think of the cold steel of your musket, the weight of the contract, the terror of the cellar. You think of the lives you took and the lives you saved. You think of the woman you were and the woman you have become. You are a part of this place now, woven into its fabric like a thread in a tapestry. No one will ever know the full story of the Hessian mercenary who fed a revolution. Your victories will not be recorded in any history book. They exist only in the full bellies of your neighbors, in the survival of your friends, in the quiet, steady beat of your own heart. I think, you say, a slow smile touching your lips. I will stay here. The people will need bread. Quote, you sip your tea, the warmth spreading through you. The birds continue their song. The sounds of the new day, of a new world, rise gently around you. You have found your home. You have found your peace. And in the tranquil hush of the new dawn, it is more than enough.